yesterday it was announced that Father Samuel Onua Maria, the founder of the Society of the Sacred and Immaculate Hearts in Nigeria, someone who had appeared on Lifesite News with John Henry Weston on the John Henry Weston show, had been kind of around on social media promoting his incredible religious community that had grown since 2020 to being 40 seminarians and 20 plus religious sisters in just a matter of 6 years in Nigeria. He had finally been consecrated a bishop by a traditionalist bishop. However, however, he immediately got some uh, backlash from I don't know whether it's some benefactors or some supporters or whoever, but he immediately took down his announcement from his website. Nevertheless, today he went forward and ordained about 12 young men to the diaconate to provide the traditional sacraments to Nigerians who are being persecuted by Muslims at gunpoint. At gunpoint. Who deserves the traditional sacraments more than those who are actually having to face death on a daily basis? On a daily basis over Nigeria. For those who constantly cry, saying, "Hey, we're being persecuted here by Muslims. Is the world going to do anything about it?" But no, Pope Leo wants to worry about recycling and say that the conflict in Nigeria isn't really a religious cause. Like he actually went out and said that.
Yeah.
But that's obviously completely and totally untrue. However, here's the thing: the backlash from traditionalist lay people, priests, whatever, to me it seems absolutely insane. Insane because these young men, these young women wanted to consecrate their lives to God, have sought for a traditional bishop to help them. They went to the SSPX. The SSPX turned them down. Bishop Fillet introduced them to Bishop Pfeiffer. They went to Bishop Schneider. Bishop Schneider couldn't help them. Obviously, I mean, there's things when you're a listed bishop, you can only do so much. So they finally went to the ultimate recourse. They contacted us. They contacted Bishop Meikle and asked for some help, and we were able to provide for help because here we are on our podcast, in a sense comfortable. Like sure, we're surrounded by communists here in the United States of United Communist States of America, but still, I've not had a gun pointed to my head. I've not had to run from gunpoint in order to survive another day. But the Nigerians, they are living a completely different reality. And those of us who are safe here, at least from gunpoint, the first things we want to do is label the people that they were consecrated by or whatever as people that are schismatic, old Catholic, these sorts of things, these like derogatory terms. And to me, it just seems absolutely absurd. Do we not realize as Catholics what the faith is about? Do we not realize like these people deserve the sacraments? They need the strength of Holy Communion. They need the strength of having knowing that they've been confessed and absolved. They need the strength of the sacraments in order to persevere to know that they're fighting for the truth, and our Lord has not abandoned them. Our Lord has not abandoned them. I love watching movies about the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. There's one of my favorite movies is Un Dios Prohibido, a prohibited God, and it's about I forgot the name of the community, the clandestines or something like that, the Claritans or Claretians or something like that. But 30 young seminarians who the communist revolutionaries captured, and they want to win these young men over to their communist side because there's young, strong men. But these men instead decide to die two by two by two by two, to not abandon their faith. And this is what inspires me. This is why one of the things that inspired me to pray the pre-55 bravery, because it was the same bravery that these young men. It was a bravery, the faith, the prayers that formed these young men, that formed their hearts to face the ultimate sacrifice, to face death for our Lord. And so here we have these Nigerians that are willing to go through the same thing. And people say, "Hey, are you in communion with Bishop Jerome Lloyd?" You know, Your Excellency, Archbishop Meikle, welcome back to Restless Heart Media. I want to
Thank
ask you
you.
a little bit about a lot of this affiliations that go on between Old Roman. Like, what does Old Roman mean? Where did it come from? What is the origin stories? How did it develop? How did the roots spring out into what it is today? And is there such a thing as one Old Roman Catholic Church?
No, So the short answer is no. So as Father Martin has said elsewhere on Twitter, it's more accurate when you refer to old Roman Catholics as an apostolic line versus a unified whole. We're not like the Episcopalians or the Anglicans or stuff like that. So we see ourselves as part of the church that our Lord founded, and originally, founded with church sanction, and then there was some canonical disputes, which we've talked about in other videos. So I won't re-whip the dead horse. But what's happened is there are people that come from that line, just like a Father James Martin is very different than Father Rippinger, right? Yet they both call themselves and understand themselves as Roman Catholic. They're very different priests. They teach very different things. So likewise, there are people that call themselves old Roman Catholic that have some differences in ecclesiology, differences in moral praxis, differences in theology, and we don't speak for those other groups. So I believe, and Father Martin can correct me, and I'll make sure it's on my website too, to be very clear, which bishops we're in communion with. So it's really myself, now the successor of John Joseph Humphreys. So I'm now the Archbishop of Cariglau, and there's also Bishop Bueller and Bishop Brusca, and now Bishop Samuel. And so those are the bishops that we are in communion with. Now, we are friends with a variety of bishops, Sede, Novus Ordo, other people of the old Roman Catholic tradition. But it's interesting because, Bishop or Archbishop Lloyd did not, he did not hear anything from me, or he did not, speak to me, and that's fine. I mean, I'm certainly not his enemy, but he's also not, we don't consider him part of our organization. If you have any other questions, either of you two, just let me know.
But yeah, I mean, Your Excellency, they everybody likes to use the name Old Roman, and of course, some people have created websites called The Old Roman or Old Roman TV, as if it's like a unique thing. Um, Obviously, like for instance, there's other lineages. For instance, I'm thinking of the Took line and the Duarte Costa line,
Right.
that get the luxury of being called a line. You know what I mean? It's like there's no
Right.
Duarte Costa Church. There's no Took Church. They're just lines. Um, why is it, do you think, that the old Romans in particular get grouped in particular as a church rather than uh, yeah, just another a lineage?
Oh, I've got a good answer for that. So if you have like Hewell's or another canon law commentary, you'll find in a section of like they'll call it separated brethren or other Christian churches or this kind of thing, you'll see that juridically the synodal church, the Novus Ordo church, mainstream, whatever you want to call it, they typically treat us canonically very similar to the Eastern Orthodox. So they acknowledge the validity of our confirmations and our sacraments, but we're not supposed to minister to one another unless it's in danger of death. So that's kind of the way canonically that's sort of set up. And what we would define our faith as is the 20 doctrinal councils, so including Vatican I, excluding all innovation contrary. And that's and so there are other groups, like there's certain Sede bishops that agree with that. There's certain traditional regulars and independents that think like that. There's some people in the Novus Ordo that think like that, but they're in the institution. So that's our definition of the Catholic faith, and that differs from what Francis and Leo XIV see. So it does put us at a little bit of friction. And so we are of the Humphreys line, the Shelley Humphreys line. And one of the character where Sea of Cariglau comes from, and I mentioned this in another video, but just to be clear with it came from one of the bishops that Arnold Matthew consecrated, named Bernard Mary Williams. And what happened was he took Archbishop Matthew in his retirement, and said, we never had a titular see, a proper titular see title for you. So Williams invented the title Gloucester, as far as just to identify from these other old Roman Catholic bishops, so that you could understand sort of who's who in the zoo, as they say. So he used the name of Gloucester where they resided, and that the Welsh name for that is Cairglau. So that's where the name comes from. And then so when Matthew died, Williams took the title, and then eventually Shelley took the title, and then there's, to compress a long history, Humphreys took the title. So, and then Humphreys, from Humphreys to me. So so what is different between us and some of the other old Romans? Now, I'm not going to give you an exhaustive list, because it's a large, it's a large family tree if we were to put it all on a whiteboard. But and like I say, some people who understand themselves as old Roman Catholic share our view identically, and some do not. And so we see it as we wish to be in complete union with an unambiguous Catholic Peter, successor of Peter, hold the 20 doctrinal councils, excluding all innovation contrary. So there's no Pachamamas, there's no fiducia supplicans, there's no communion in the hand, there's none of all this crazy stuff they invented in the last 60 years. There's no feminization of the church. There's no, round ladies with blue hair giving out Holy Communion. None of that foolishness. No ukuleles, no fuzzy guitars, no skateboards. You get the idea. So we just want the old mass and the old faith. And that's the mission. And for all of those traditionals, and maybe this is a good point to ask Father Lafort about his experience, because he found a home working alongside us. But our tent is pretty big, in the sense that as long as you believe that the Catholic faith is the 20 doctrinal councils, excluding all innovation contrary, then we don't say to other groups, you're not Catholic. We've never claimed that we're the only part of the remnant. What we certainly do seem to be in a time where the remnant church is small, like Benedict XVI predicted. The future church will be small and more faithful, but it'll be rejected by the world and rejected by the larger churches, likely. So anyway, I don't know, maybe I'll finish there and let you guys talk.
Father Lafort, you have the unique background, so to speak. Archbishop Meikle and I came to Cariglow because Father John Melnick, who worked for the Pontifical Commission Ecclesiae Dei, pointed us specifically to this group and said, this is a group I trust. However, you didn't necessarily have that, per se, someone tell you that directly to come here, but you were able to visit, you were able to see what we stood for, what, our mission is, how we live it. But also, too, is, when you come here, maybe other bishops from other sedevacantist groups or other traditionalist groups don't necessarily immediately understand, because they think, oh, old Roman, Pius XII excommunicated old Romans, and maybe we can talk about that particular issue a little later in this episode in particular. But what do you find to be the major accusations, the major arguments that people try to, or priests in particular, traditionalist priests, lay on you that you think are completely, totally unfounded and untrue?
So I guess the major thing for me was to see that all I found were Catholics here. I think all I found were clergy here that hold the Catholic faith, as Bishop Meikle elaborated, that the clergy here believe in the 20 ecumenical councils and no innovation to the contrary. And that, I don't know how official it is, but I mean, I've never met a priest here who's una cum at this point, from Francis to Leo. And, at this point, we owe each other charity. And I come from the Novus Ordo myself. All three of us come from the Novus Ordo. All three of us had Novus Ordo seminary training. And we know not just the moral peccadillos of the Novus Ordo hierarchy, but also that they just don't hold the Catholic faith. And we want to find bishops that hold the Catholic faith, and also, too, if you can keep the peccadillos to a minimum, if not obliterated at all, that's great, perfect. We're not Donatists. We don't believe that the unholiness of the ministers causes invalidity of sacraments. We're here because we believe that God has rights, and he has a right to be worshipped the way he wants to be worshipped, and believe the way he wants to be believed, and love the way he wants to be loved. And finding one of the strengths, one of the fruits of the See of Cariglow is they own their churches. And in the sedevacantist world of everybody kind of fends for themselves, and whatever lay people they can have as benefactors, they're at the mercy of so many lay people. And contrary to Archbishop Fulton Sheen, the late Fulton Sheen, whose fake canonization will be in November or September or whatever, because you have to have a valid pope to give a valid canonization. He said the laity would save the church. And that's actually ridiculous, because the laity did not save the church in Christ's time, and the laity will not save the church at the Antichrist time. And the church is monarchical in its structure. And sure, Christ can work through anybody to work miracles. When it comes to saving the church, that is to teach the faith, to govern, and to sanctify, that is the job of the clergy. And so I think it was actually a modernist statement of Fulton Sheen to say that the laity would save the church. That being said, the biggest fruit that I found coming here to the CF Care Glau is that they own their own churches. And so when you don't own your own church and the lay people own the church or the chapel that you operate out of, that lends itself to the heresy condemned by Pope Leo XIII called the heresy of Americanism. And Americanism is more or less that lay boards hire and fire the clergy. So the question is, should lay people have governing power over bishops and priests? And if you're a Catholic, the answer is absolutely no. But we find ourselves in such a crisis that not even the traditional Catholic groups like the Sedevacantists can claim that they own their properties outright in some cases. And so that was my experience in the first 4 years or 4.5 years of being a traditional priest in the Sedevacantist movement, was living in that instability of being at the mercy of the lay people of the properties of which I was offering mass in their chapels. So no traditional group has it all figured out 100% until there's a Catholic pope to quash all the dissenters. I think one of the proofs that the chair of Peter is vacant currently is that there's no unity in the Novus Ordo, and there's no unity, at least as far as governance. I'll say as far as governance, not in faith, but in governance in the Sedevacantist world and traditional Catholic world. So having a unity of governance can only be solved with having a Roman pontiff as dad coming home and saying to all the sons, okay, get along now. All your brothers, you need to get along. So what I found in the CF Care Glau was, number one, a strong comprehension of the Catholic faith, and number two, a strong charity towards brother clergy. And number three, we own our own church properties. So if I were to be dismissed by Bishop Meikle for some reason or whatever, I could accept that because that comes from an authority higher than me, a bishop. But if it was a lay person, a lay board saying, oh, we don't like Father anymore and we have to kick him out, we don't like that he's preaching on some really hard moral teaching on the church in marriage or contraception or abortion or the rainbow agenda, and the lay people don't want me to preach that anymore, well, they don't have a say because we own the buildings. If you don't like it, you can leave. So there's no compromise of the Catholic faith in our preaching, which I would say, 99% of the time, if not 100% of the time in Sedevacantist chapels, most traditional priests have given up everything to follow our Lord, so they're not going to compromise the faith. But that being said, you're still at the mercy of certain niche topics if you were beholden to lay people as those in governance over you that hold the purse strings. So that's been my perspective. I like to use the word tradumenical. I really want all the clans to be one and to stop the circulating firing squad. That being said, there are clergy that I talk to, bishops that I talk to, that want to be united, and I'm very encouraged by that. And discussions are happening behind closed doors and individual phone calls, and that's a very good thing that we could take steps forward. I think it only could strengthen the movement that much more if we're united in understanding our approach and understand there's different charisms. There's different charisms, but we all have to be on the same page as far as doctrine and dogma and liturgy. And these discussions really need to happen. And we'll talk about Americanism and the lay people really holding the purse strings. I don't want to step on any toes here, but the SSPX, I want to know really who's who's funding them in order to stay stuck to the 1962 missile? That's what I really want to know. Like, who is really the motive behind, other than, because Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre was a diplomat. He was not a theologian. He was not a liturgist. Yes, he loved the Mass. Yes, he understood Catholic theology to a point. Obviously, he was an archbishop and he was a missionary to Africa, thanks be to God. But he was not a liturgist in the sense of understanding the real arguments of the crisis. And he was picked 1962 strictly to show his good faith to modernist Rome. So it wasn't even out of a love for the 62 missile. It was out of trying to compromise with being a diplomat to modernist Rome. So I would have to ask, at this point, now that we are 30 plus years removed from the good Archbishop's passing, why is Angelus Press wasting money on 1962 resources when the majority of the traditional movement, even the FSSP, who has an indult to do the Latin Mass inside of the Novus Ordo, they are doing the pre-55. So even if the FSSP is showing up to SSPX with the pre-55, and then all those Sede Vacantes groups are doing either pre-55 or like pre-58 liturgies, why is the largest traditional group still stuck in the 62 world? So who is funding that? You know, and plus, isn't it the incentive of, Angelus Press to actually update and republish pre-55 material, because that's more books they could sell?
Exactly. And I would put that to them too, is like, Angelus Press, if you're watching, if you can please republish Matters Liturgical in the pre-55 form, not in just the 1962 form, you would do so much good to traditional priests, so much good. If you could reprint Matters Liturgical. See, look, my binding, pretty bad. Listen, but we live by these things. If you could republish this, because man, to get anybody else to publish it, like, you go to Romani's House Press and they just want like $30,000 for like a prayer book. Like, dude, do that. But you bring up an interesting point, Father Lafort, in that when you were talking about traditionalist priests laying down their lives, like, people really do think just because of there's a cross on the top of our building, that like money just falls from the sky and into our bank accounts. People are like, oh, your finances are great. No, you know what our finances are? How much money do you put on the basket on Sunday? Because that's our finances. People truly don't understand that, like, if we have to have a 9-to-5 job, that means, like, if I'm flipping burgers at McDonald's from 9 to 5, and you call me, Father, I'm having a heart attack, I need you to anoint me. I'm at work. I'll get up at 5. If you're alive at 5, I'll go anoint you. But, like, if I have to work, I have to work. They don't understand this reality. One of the reasons, the main reason why you need to provide your traditionalist priest a salary, a means of living, is so that he's available for you when you need him. And if you can't provide that, then you can't necessarily expect that. And I think in the traditionalist world, we don't necessarily appreciate that enough. And especially when they're, many traditionalist groups, from the CMRIs to the SSPX resistance, they spend a lot of time traveling to missions, and it makes their prayer life very, very difficult, or at least it puts strain on their prayer life. And the lay people don't appreciate it enough. Like, you see them having a house mass for 2 families, if anything else, and people don't appreciate these sacrifices. But one thing that I wanted to get to, especially with you, Your Excellency, Archbishop Meikle, is precisely this deal with Saint Pius X. Now, it's one of the arguments that people have brought up against old Romans, in particular Arnold Harris Matthew, that Pope Saint Pius X excommunicated him. To me personally, it seems like a very easy thing to see, in the sense that if we were living, say right now, if we were living in 1900s, there'd be no reason to join any other group outside of the institutional church. You have the Church of the Mass, the sacraments, all that kind of stuff. There'd be no reason to follow in the footsteps of Arnold Harris Matthews or join whatever sect he created, that sort of thing, in 1910. Right. In 2026, whose side do you think Pius X would be on? Us or Pachamama?
Yeah, us.
Us or Leo?
Us.
So, sticking to this idea that, back in this particular date, Pius X said this. Okay, Circumstances have radically changed.
Well,
Radically changed.
and also the story. I would say to folks, like, look into why Matthew was excommunicated. So first of all, some basic Catholic 101 stuff. Excommunications don't inherit. So that's point one. And point two is the reason why Pius X did is because the English hierarchy needed to be reestablished. You will recall that Henry VIII, all these English martyrs, right? St. Thomas More, St. John Fisher. Well, guess what? The Catholic hierarchy was not legal and allowed in England for quite some time. And Pius X had an opportunity to restore the Catholic hierarchy. The reason why the story of Matthew, and I talked about this, I think, in another episode, but the short version is this. The Anglo-Catholic movement, who were under the Church of England, who prayed for the Pope, used Catholic missals, were sort of like an underground church of sorts in their own way, simply thought they were separated Catholic priests, that it was a political dispute apart from their faith, and that God would sort it out someday. And then when Leo the 13th came out and said Anglican orders are null and void, a bunch of them panicked because they honestly thought, right, that they were Catholic. So they sought a solution. They sought to come to Rome. Rome couldn't take them because if they accepted their conversions, it would have ruined the diplomatic action to restore the Catholic hierarchy. It was a political hot potato. So what do you do with these poor men who just, what can they, are they supposed to go forth and still say mass if they've just been told by the Pope they believe in that they're invalid? No. So someone floated the idea, well, listen, across the channel in the Netherlands is Archbishop Gull of the old Catholics. Now, that at that time, there was only, we call old Romans, that's actually came from Matthew, and we'll explain that briefly too. So they go over to get Gull just to ordain a bunch of Anglicans, right? Or Church of England folks. Gull said, I don't want any part of the politics. He had a very cordial and sane relationship with Rome. He didn't want to get stuck in the vortex. So he said, what I will do, you guys decide amongst you who I'm consecrating. I'm consecrating one of you, and you will take care of the Anglo-Catholics. And so that was the reason why Matthew originally got consecrated. So what happened was Matthew thought that basically these guys would just fold into Rome after the dust settled, but that's not what happened. Canterbury found out there was a huge open fight, open letters between Matthew and Canterbury. And Pius X sided with Canterbury because he wanted to get the hierarchy there. So these guys were all sort of thrown under the bus. Sometimes the institutional church in its human element, or what they consider to be a greater good, in our opinion, did the wrong thing about how they handled these men. And God will judge, and I love Pius X is the only saint that I own a first-class relic of my own personal property, and I love him so much, but I disagree with him knowing the history as I do. He was in a difficult spot, and that's the decision he made. So what's that got to do with you and me if you're thinking of going to one of our churches? The excommunications don't inherit. We were not excommunicated over doctrine. We were excommunicated over politics. And now we are one of the brother churches, the different groups, the different Catholic jurisdictions and societies and institutes and everything else that hold to the traditional Catholic faith as defined by the 20 doctrinal councils, excluding all innovation contrary, and the Catholic moral praxis. We are one of many groups. Some are Sede, some are not Sede, some are a closer relationship to Novus Ordo than we are. But the thing is, what do we share in common? We share a common in the restoration that we want to be united under a Catholic Peter. We all acknowledge it's a Catholic Peter. And the standard is very clear. 20 doctrinal councils. Like I say, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to reinvent the faith. The reason why we find ourselves irregular now is it is our position that what has happened in the past 60 years has deviated from the faith that we have received as a Catholic people. And so it's aggravating when the Vatican allows Islamic prayer room in their chambers, but treat traditionalists like they did with the society with those excommunications back in July. There was no need for this. We can, if they're supposed to be so synodal and welcoming, then where is the dialogue? There is no dialogue. Not if you're conservative, if anthropologically conservative or theologically conservative, that's not the direction they're going in at all. And one Pachamama incident can be attributed to a fruitcake. but they continue to do it, and the evidence keeps coming out, and people are waking up. And my fear, brothers and sisters, is I don't want Catholics who are discouraged by the crazy to run to the Orthodox. The Orthodox are beautiful people, but here's the thing. If you're baptized in the West, fight for the West. Find a traditional chapel, join in the fight, and it's not just about the Mass. It's about the faith. They're rewriting it before our very eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Your Excellency, because the old Roman lineage has been spread out so far and vast with consecration after consecration, especially with after bishops like Bishop Grosvold, who just basically, he would have consecrated the milkman if he showed up at the door and asked for consecration. In particular, there are two bishops now that are prevalent on the internet and writing materials that are trying to claim the entirety, or at least affiliation with everyone who also has the name Old Roman. These bishops are Bishop William Myers and Bishop Jerome Lloyd. I don't intend to spread, or I don't intend to detract. Detraction, of course, is saying true things unnecessarily to damage someone's reputation. However, you and I have come to the knowledge of information that is scandalous about either the personal lives of these men or about the lives of the priests that they defend. Which is what has led me, in particular, on the Oblate's website, Oblate St. Augustine, to put a page about Old Roman affiliations, in particular, and listing all of the website. Well, first of all, the bishops that are ours. So there's simply four: Archbishop Meikle, Bishop Euler, Bishop Brusca, and Bishop Samuel. You won't see Bishop Myers here. You won't see Bishop Lloyd here. But then also the following websites that are affiliated with us. Because if you're looking at a website that says something about Old Romans or Old Roman Catholics, and it's not on this website, it's not on this list, it's not one of us. So they could probably have some sort of scandal attributed to them. But then also, too, social media accounts that are particular to Carrick-Lowe, listen on these sites. And Father Lafort, I'll get you to add some of, I think we have Our Lady of the Rosary here. Listed.
Do you have rosarychurch.net in there?
That's what this one links
okay.
to.
It looks so small on my computer.
Okay. But yeah, to do these sorts of things so that people just can't latch on to the work that we're doing and discredit it by what they allow. Because Bishop William Myers will oftentimes take pictures of us and attribute it to himself and his own organization. Bishop Jerome Lloyd, same thing, might write an article saying, oh, look how great, they're Old Roman. Oh, look, we're also Old Roman, so it's basically the same thing. No, not at all. Not at all, not at all, not at all. And I don't even think Bishop Jerome Lloyd even grew up Novus Ordo or part of the institutional church. I think he was like Anglican and then just kind of got Old Roman orders sort of thing and kind of attributes himself to the fact, whereas all three of us grew up in the institution and we're here to be traditionalists. This was a traditionalist group. So that is ultimately what we're trying to say, is that we're not here because of some sort of different creed or idea. We're here simply to remain faithful traditionalist Catholics. And one of the questions that I'm often asked is, why didn't you just choose SSPX? Well, the SSPX, as I've mentioned before, is a missionary order. They send all their priests out basically every weekend to drive several hours, have flights to do masses at one particular place once a month maybe, and then fly home. Me, I'm a monastic. I establish a monastery, and then I take the lay people that are around me and I form them. This is kind of the old missionary aspect, where when the Franciscan came to the United States, San Antonio, we have all those missions there. They built an establishment, they built a home, and they evangelized the indigenous. They stayed. Today, the missionary idea is just to go once a month on a Sunday, and that's it. It's a different idea of missionary, But my vocation is the monastery, and as I said before, the reason why Bishop Samuel couldn't get the Society of the Sons, the Society of the Sacred and Immaculate Hearts The Society of Sacred SSIH. There's all these different ways to say it. The Society of the Sacred and Immaculate Hearts. Under SSPX is because they were a new community. They weren't like ancient. They weren't the OPs. They weren't the Order of Preachers or anything like that. They weren't the Carmelites. And that's technically all that Rome will allow SSPX to accept, and SSPX obliges. So they had to look elsewhere. De facto, they had to look elsewhere. So this is why SSPX isn't the one and only one-stop shop for all of tradition. They can't be. If they're going to compromise with Rome and accept the limitations that Rome gives them, they can't be the one-stop shop for all of tradition. And this is what people need to come to understand. I'm not denigrating SSPX. They have to be concerned for their survival. They have to be concerned for their good. No one's faulting them for that. But to think that the SSPX is just the only place that people can go to, also too, like, again, some diocesan priests who are converted to tradition want to be exclusively traditional priests. They don't have that missionary charism. They don't. They just maybe just want to be a pastor at a parish. That's it. Well, some place like Carraglow would be probably more in line of what they see their vocation is, rather than being an SSPX priest where you're on an airplane every weekend or in a car for several hours.
And there's some ecclesiological different. I mean, let's not turn it into that. But there are. I see us as all brother traditionalists, and it's just, I think what you're speaking to, Father, is when people say, well, why weren't you with this group, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like as if it never occurred to us that to research all the various groups.
Yeah. Just on that SSPX note of the charism. So I'm in a group chat of a few different group chats of men, Catholic men. And one of the groups is actually SSPX men in the West Palm Beach, South Florida area. And they were shocked when I told them that I offer mass every day at my chapel. And they wanted to weep for joy. It's like, so can we go? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you want to come, because they never get daily mass. The SSPX chapels that have mission chapels, they never get daily mass. And here they had it 30 minutes south of them. And so, I said, yeah, by the way, I mean, I also hear confessions too. So if you need confession during the week, because your father that comes in from Stafford, Florida, from the Priory is not there, look, here, you have my number, contact me, I'll take care of you. So, that's just one of the things. I'm a pastor. I'm not a missionary. I'm a pastor. And I also teach Bible studies. And I was thinking of I thought there was 4 different subjects I had to study for. I had to study and prepare for my sermon. I had to study and prepare for Bible study. I had to study and prepare for catechism class. And I had to study and prepare for marriage prep. So there were 4 different days of the week last week where I had to intentionally study and prepare. And my brain was just racked with just all this information. And then I had to prepare the next week's Sunday sermon and Bible study and catechism, and then more, and actually preparing for this class, this episode. So it never ends. It never ends, and I love it. It's just nonstop. It's complete action packed all the time. I mean, whoever thought a priest's life is boring has no idea what a priest goes through every day.
No, absolutely. So there's many of these challenges, many of these. I mean, obviously, as a layperson, you only look at this and surmount it if you have goodwill. A lot of people, of course, latch on to I call it bumper sticker theology. They just want to put the SSPX symbol on the back of their truck window, or CMRI, or these sorts of things, and just say, "Hey, I'm a part of this group." I recently got a notification from somebody on Twitter who, I made a tweet saying basically they're going to close all the traditional Latin masses in the entire country, and this person just basically replied, "I don't care. I'm SSPX. I'm SSPX. Like, listen, if you're a layperson, you're not SSPX. You haven't taken any promises or vows in the SSPX. You're just a layperson. You have, you're not a part of actually the group. But it's the mentality. I'm SSPX, or I'm CMRI, or I'm SAMP, or I'm this, I'm that. Listen, you're not. You just go to you're an attendee. You're an attendee. You're a parishioner. So that's also one of the problems. Is there's this pack mentality that people also have. That they need to feel that they belong to something that's greater for themselves, but that also they have to have an enemy to fight. And this is when, Father Lafort, you were talking about the circular firing squad. Like, we have to have enemies, but the insanity is that we make the Traz the enemies rather than the No Sword of the enemies.
Right.
So we had Sanborn against Maguire, Sanborn against Pivarunas, Maguire, and Sanborn against Cedar Glow and Bishop Meikle. We have to have this Trad circular firing squad because we have to have enemies to conquer, sort of thing. We have to have somebody easy to destroy. And that doesn't help the traditional movement. That doesn't help tradition in any way, shape, or form, because no traditional group has the capacity to cover the entire world. So we need to work together, agree to disagree on those things that are not of dogma and doctrine that we have to believe in, and provide the sacraments and traditional faith to the faithful.
Absolutely.
And to that respect, all the more reason, personally, I'm a friend of, or at least the idea of unum sanctum, of having an imperfect ecumenical council to say, okay, we need to have a conclave, and then eventually elect some guy that we can get behind who we'd call the Holy Father, because obviously the guy in white and red right now, Leo the 14th, is not the Holy Father. And to cause unity among the ranks. Obviously, Leo the 13th, and I think this is the point of division. Father Chicada had a sermon about why can't we just all get along? And it's about dogma. It's about doctrine. It's about the faith. And Pope Leo the 13th, not the 14th, the 13th, so a real Catholic pope in the late 1800s, he wrote a papal encyclical called Satis Cognitum. It is sufficiently known, on the unity of the church. And he says that the Catholic faith is the principal unity in the church. So understanding the Catholic faith is in its entirety, which is quite a task. But to understand the Catholic faith in its entirety needs to be the source of unity, not the latest installment of what we think the Catholic Church's faith is, but what it actually is. Not what we think, not how we interpret it, but what has actually been taught in black and white. And that requires a lot of humility and understanding of nuance. I mean, when it comes to Vatican I, obviously the perpetual successors argument from the Novus Ordo, it doesn't mean that that we have to have a pope. It just means that whoever the next guy is, who's a legitimate pope, is a successor of St. Peter. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that we have to have this guy, Leo, has to be the pope, because if he's not the pope, then the church is defected and everything is gone. No, well, Leo the 14th disproves the divinity of Christ if he is the pope. Okay. And Francis disproves the divinity of God and the divinity of Christ if he is the pope, because on their ordinary, universal, authentic magisterium, they deny the divinity of Christ. They deny the dogma of the necessity of being in the Catholic Church to be saved. So, and as far as there's a comment, and I'll just push back just very gently about Pope Benedict being the last true pope, let's keep in mind that Cardinal Ratzinger, Father Ratzinger, was one of the main periti at Vatican II who perjured himself against his oath against modernism. So he had to take an oath against modernism as a priest, and he was friends with Yves Congar and Henri de Lubac, who were condemned heretics before John the 23rd claimed to be the next Roman pontiff who started Vatican II. So if the Holy Office condemned Henri de Lubac and Yves Congar, and and Karl Rahner, and these are the bosom buddies of Ratzinger, he's just as modernist as all the rest. And the only difference is he's Hegelian in his approach. So Cardinal Ratzinger was as much as a wolf in sheep's clothing as the only difference was Francis took the lipstick off the pig, and Benedict put the lipstick on the pig. So I just a very gentle pushback that what you'll hear in other traditional circles, other traditional clergy, it's about Benedict being the last true pope. They're just a little pushback because people do question his legitimacy as pontiff. So I just wanted to give kind of a rebuttal to that in the comments. I saw that and I'm like, I can't let this slide. Look, now, no one loved Ratzinger more than me. Whenever I was in seminary, I had bookshelves of Ratzinger. Okay, I loved the guy. And then when I realized that he was actually the main enemy of the faith during the council, and he was promoted as a cardinal afterwards as a reward for his modernism and his perjuring against the oath against modernism that he took, required by Pope Pius X. It makes you rethink a lot of things. So I just want to say that if you've never heard that before, but I know, and I'm not just saying it because it's a common perception. There's a lot of priests in the recognize and resist world, or the Bene Plenist world, that want to say Benedict was the last true pope. He was a wolf in wolf's clothing. Yeah. For those who want to see. Yeah. If you have eyes to see, thank you, Alberto, for saying that. And, he publicly manifested his heresy by bifurcating the papacy, or at least his belief that he could bifurcate the papacy, turn it into two different heads, a ministerial head and an office head. So you have the pastoral office, and you have the ministerial office, and then you also have just the office of the papacy itself. So he gave Francis the pastoral side of the office of the papacy, and he took just the regular office of just being the papacy. So you can't have two heads. He made the church have two heads, like as the church is a monster. So that, to me, actually, the way that he resigned and his understanding of how the papacy could be bifurcated, being split in two, is itself a publicly manifest heresy that did no good for the church. It gave us the monster Francis. So, if anything, I just want to lift that up, but not to poke anybody in the eye, but just very gently just say, there's a reason people think that the last true pope was died in 1958, and that Ratzinger was not a solution, but he perpetuated a problem.
1939, Your Excellency.
Well, yeah. So again, this is one of the areas where Father Lafort and I have slight difference, and I say slight because obviously he's one of us as well, right? So, or at least he, and we appreciate his work a great deal. The way I always viewed it is it's above my pay grade. So where we're all in agreement is that there was something definitely, we agree about the bifurcation. We agree that was a wound in the church. I think it's pretty clear looking back on it that he intended it, whether it had any effect or not, again, it's a matter of debate. And we definitely know that, with Francis, Houston, we have a problem. And then, of course, subsequent with Leo. So there's a dubium at the very least. So what I would say with us is that we sort of see ourselves as a bridge between a lot of sedes and non-sedes in that respect. It's not a fence-sitting position. It's saying that these arguments that Father Lafort mentioned deserve a proper hearing. And so my, I haven't talked to Bishop Waugh yet. I'd like to at some point. But my suggestion is for the project is to have a 10-year process, have an imperfect council, but have a 10-year process. And with in-person conference once a year, Zoom conferences regularly outside of that, and have it open source to all traditional clergy, that we steel man the various discussion papers and arguments and present that to whoever claims to be sitting on the throne of Peter, basically saying, if you can't assent to this, because we've had a 60-year de facto schism, whether we like it or not, okay? And the church is healed in the past when it becomes formal. And so the thing is, everybody's scared about, everybody gets scared about, schism. But the thing is, there's no point in unity if you're in communion with Pachamama and the Abrahamic Family House and the State Church of China. So that's the thing that people are kind of red pilling to or waking up to. And these questions deserve a proper hearing. They deserve a mass to the Holy Ghost, all the traditional bishops of the world, every retired Novus Ordo who can accept that definition of 20 doctrinal councils, excluding all innovation contrary, and that basically everybody presents their points just like in the councils of old, and sort this out, because we're not getting it from this current thing. And I think what's going to happen if you had a process, and deliberately a long process, because in that process, all the clergy will get to know one another. And we'll get to, we're not just words on a web page. We're not just a YouTube video. And you're going to see what I think will all end up in the exact same place. I think that would be a very fruitful thing. I think the danger of rushing a process will be that it won't be accepted by all of the traditionals. So, and I think the only way it's going to work, given it's a global issue, is that it has to be time, and it has to be steel manned, and it has to be basically peer reviewed. So that's interesting, and you know, actually, it's worth about 6 shows on their own. Thank you, Father, for opening up a whole can of whoop. And if I could just say one more thing, just one more thing. Yeah, exactly. He loves to stir the pot, and I do too, right? So if you dish it, you got to take it. But the thing is that I just wanted to say something too about Archbishop Myers and Archbishop Lloyd. You know, we mean no animosity either. What we're just saying is we're very different. We're not affiliated. And there's an argument to be made. Like, they have an argument because of the historical way that they are being true to what they understand as old Roman Catholic, and we're the crazy guys who want to be too Roman. I've heard some of people from their groups describe what they don't like about us is we're too Roman, and so that's fine. That's a fair criticism from their perspective. And again, we mean no ill will or what have you. And I will commend some of Archbishop Myers's writing in the historical realm and the like has been helpful. So again, we don't consider them our enemies or anything like that. But it's very important we're clear. We're also not affiliated, because again, we don't have any knowledge of what all these various groups have been up to for the last 60 years. And you know, you can't say that you're part of a group that you don't even know. So I don't know if Father Martin has some more to say about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately you need a head, and you need to be obedient, a constitution to be governed by. And if there's no constitution that all these groups are being governed by, then yeah, each one can do their own thing, and then the other people get splattered with the collateral damage of what one bishop particularly decides to do, and that's what we don't want. And so we don't want people to mention us. We don't want people to mention what the things that we're doing that are other old Romans, precisely because we get splattered with collateral damage. Like, if you want to comment about the events that we're doing here in Kerglo, you better not be gay, because if you're gay,
or at least email myself or Father Martin as the chancellor first before you make announcements or whatever on our behalf.
Because if you're gay, or you're defending a priest that you have that is gay, and there's video evidence of it, then we're gonna come at you. So don't do it. You're not affiliated with us. Don't do it. So, someone's saying here, split penny, what's your position on the Vatican II popes? Here's reality. Our position is that nothing is dogmatic. Nothing is dogmatic, because there's a difference between reality and law, and this is the way that our Lord constituted the church. There's a reality, there's law. So, for instance, a marriage can be true sacramentally, but not recognized according to law. It could also be recognized according to law, but not true sacramentally. Absolutely. This is how annulments occur. So there's these two realities. This is why both the recognize and resist and sedevacantist positions, they're just like a seesaw that tips one direction over the other. But they're both plausible. And we haven't had a pope actually declare which one declare the emergency fire escape route. You know how on you're in elementary school, you had your drills, you had your escape route, everybody knew what to do. We don't have that for this situation. We don't have that for this crisis. We have theologians that gave their opinions. But talk about opinions when having a fire escape route. There's chaos, regardless. There's chaos because it was just a matter of opinions. So this is why we say, anybody who wants to fight for tradition, fight for the restoration, keep the faith, administer the sacraments, get people to heaven, sanctify souls. These are really the people that understand. These are the true Catholics. This is what we're fighting for: is souls. And
I would say, Father, all of us, sede, non-sede, and everything in between, will recognize that restoration. So that's why I say that I understand the frustration of the commenter. Like, why don't you just be clear? Because we're actually all going to end up in the exact same place. We all want the same thing. We'll all be obedient to that Catholic Pope. So it's like that accepts the old faith, and so that's where the union is. The unity is that we all see ourselves as part of this restoration, different organs in the body to achieve it, and God's going to do this. It's not going to be any brilliant idea of any of us three or you guys in the comments. It's God's going to tell us what to do, and we're all going to recognize it. If the whole movement's of God, he's going to fix it. But we have to do our part.
Yeah, and I would just say, and I brought this in the comments too, that the R&R is also a soft, practical version of sede vacante. So in reality, we are closer together than farther apart.
We believe in the same faith. That's ultimately it.
The same faith.
Yeah.
The only difference is the 62 missile that Angelus Press can't get stopped. And can't help everybody else out by doing pre-55 stuff. You heard that? Okay.
Pre-55 braveries. Pre-55 braveries. That's what we need.
They're going to be some poor rep is going to get flipped this, right? They're gonna
exactly.
Say,
we should rename the episode "Anti-Angelus Press."
No, we're not anti. We're not anti.
We're not anti. We're pro you. We want you to make as much money as possible by giving us pre-55 material. Anyway, so yeah, the main point is that even in this group chat of the SSPX lay people, shout out to the SSPX laymen that I talk to on I'd say twice a week, because I'm only having enough free time for twice a week. I dedicate a thumb war, on Telegram or we should call it WhatsApp on these group chats. But anyway, shout out to them. They actually they tolerate me, unlike Avoiding Babylon's group chat cannot tolerate me. So you heard me, Anthony, call shots fired. And I've always said people have their theology more based on their geography than they do on theology itself. So where you get your sacraments available, I would actually, and Anthony Abate never answered my question, and neither did Rob. If I were to, as a sede vacantis clergy or as an old Roman Catholic clergy that believes that the chair of Peter has been vacant since 1958, that's my personal opinion. That's what, after my studies.
1939.
1939. Yeah. So thank you, Father Martin.
And I lean towards the Benny. So the three of us, we have three different dates of where the rupture happened. It's hilarious.
So I'm the normie in the group with the regular sede vacantis position.
Normie. Always are calling you normie.
That's right.
I'm the normie sede.
How often has poor Father Lafort been called that? Right.
I've never been called a normie before.
No,
but I don't mind it. But
that's all right.
The point is that I asked them a question in the group chat, and I got banned for asking this question. But if I could provide sacraments for them regularly for their families, would you actually come to my mass instead of having to drive an hour to go to the FSSP or the insult mass that they go to? Right. I'm sorry, the indult mass. Would you actually? And they couldn't answer the question. They didn't want to answer the question. Yeah, they blocked me for that. Yeah, if they could have access to a sede vacantis clergy to offer mass, and would they be open to at least the position and hearing? And that's the same question I asked to Kennedy Hall. Actually, I never asked Kennedy Hall this question, to be fair to him, but I asked him the same question. If he didn't have the SSPX, but let's say he had St. Gertrude the Great, or a priest over there, or Sanborn priest, or a CMRI priest, would he actually go there versus the SSPX if he didn't have access to the SSPX? Right. So people mostly base their theology on their geography, not their theology itself. That I rest my case on that. So all the more reason why I look at other traditional clergy as my friends. I don't look at them as my enemy, but right. I would appreciate it if we all stopped putting Leo's name in the canon. And plus, but for disclosure, none of us here put Leo's name in the canon.
True.
Okay, so I just wanted to let it's an important disclosure to make, and that's what allows me, with good conscience, to say, yeah, okay, I can get along with Bishop Meikle and Father Martin, and one day we'll have a pope to figure this out and give a dogmatic statement of saying this is what happened, this is where the bodies are buried, and this is the analysis, and so we can have a forensic study of what Vatican II actually was and in the aftermath of it and everything else. But we know the solution is to go backwards, not forwards.
Well, here's the reality, too. Is Father John taught me an incredibly important secret from all of his years of experience. You know what he taught me? Never trust a priest who doesn't drink. And there's incredible wisdom behind it.
Well, I had tequila earlier.
Because those who don't know, when they loosen up a little bit, they reveal who they truly are. And so if they're hiding something, they'll refrain from the drink. The ones that don't have anything to hide will drink. If they drink just a little bit too much, no problem. They just go to bed, whatever. But it's important little things. Like, it's not that I motivate you or encourage you, whatever else, but that one guy said, "Oh no, I don't drink." Oh really? Yeah. Okay. See my eyebrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything in moderation, right? But I will say, so when I raise my glass, you'll notice there is Guinness and it has Guinness on the glass, right? But I'm not sponsored. However, I will say, well, if they want to sponsor me, if anybody over in Ireland sees it, want to let me know. But this might be a good segue to get Father Martin to tell us about Prochidamos.
Prochidamos.com. Wait, okay.
You got to make Father Lafort go off to the side for a second, so they'll have the website.
No. I'm gonna bring up the website.
He's covering the logo.
How do I post a share screen?
Well, you're gonna make it over him.
Prochidamos.com, our second annual Prochidamos Gala, where you're just gonna support traditional Catholic clergy, our operational expenses, so that we can continue to grow the traditional Catholic movement, particularly. And I would call it mid-Florida. Supposedly mid-Florida is like South Florida, because South Florida is like all Everglades and nobody ever can possibly live and sustain their own lives in South Florida. So mid-Florida is technically South Florida. South Florida, Deerfield Beach, Pinellas Park, which is St. Petersburg area, Tampa Bay area, Hudson, which is North Tampa Bay. This is where we are. We're raising money to support operational expenses so that we can go to the traditional movement. Obviously, Restless Heart Media is an apostolate of the Old Roman Catholic Carry Glow and the Oblates of St. Augustine. So all the spiritual content you get here, and we're working on a unique membership subscription for our philosophy classes that we teach in seminary. That'll be coming here this fall. So there's plenty of material here you can get to nourish your spiritual life. Prochidamos is precisely that which funds all of this. So if you can't go for whatever reason, you can still go to the website and put in a donation. You can put in a donation, or you can buy a ticket. They're less than half price than what they were less than half price. Now the price raised up of what they were last year. We're gonna have His Excellency and I speak. We'll have a keynote speaker, and then a bunch of people from the Tampa Bay area and from elsewhere in the United States. I know there's people coming in from California, possibly from Canada, and everybody and someplace else.
Yeah.
That
come and meet us in person. And plus,
exactly.
It's a great place to invite your friends who live in colder climate to come to Florida in February. It's perfect time.
Exactly. There'll be 2 hours of cocktails to enjoy with all of the speakers and everybody else, and then a nice dinner with steak and chicken and all that kind of stuff. 2 meats, and it'll be just a great evening. The feedback we got from last year was that from people that have attended several different galas, it's just kind of a regular occurrence for them. It's just what they do. They said this was the best gala that they attended. Nice. It was the best gala. It was our first one we put on. It was the best gala attended. I think we hit the nail on the head. If you want to support traditional Catholic movement, Prochidamos Gala, February 6th, 2027. Hit the link in the description, and come support traditional Catholicism.
It's good to put your money where it's going to make the best difference and support their clergy that are making the biggest impact, that are on the front lines and cutting edge. So instead of, you might want to skip out the subscription with the dad and the webcam and give to actually clergy. So the dads and webcams have cattle and large swaths of land and are worth millions of dollars. So we are not.
And they block me.
That's priceless. and they block us on social media.
Right, they do.
And they change their opinions. Yes. So I guessed wrong. Oh, the answer is bourbon on the rocks. Okay.
Okay.
So so the point is, the word cleric means a portion. Our portion is the Lord, and our life is dedicated to the service of God and holy things. And just like you would want your neurosurgeon to be up to date on all the latest neurosurgeon practices and literature, your Catholic priest, your traditional Catholic priest, has to be up to date on the scriptures, canon law, moral theology, dogmatic theology, listening to different podcasts and other people that are on social media talking about the faith that actually don't have any mandates to do that, and see what people are listening to. By the way, you should be listening to more clergy who actually have the office to teach, govern, and sanctify, more than lay people who don't have that office to teach, govern, and sanctify. So when you're listening to lay people, keep in mind that you're listening to entertainment and opinions. And you don't want to be listening to lay people that are just, keep in mind, most Catholic content out there is entertainment. And if I can give a shout out, actually, I want to do a solid to my boy, that Michael from Serie Picante. That guy streams every night, and his content is making fun of all the Recognize and Resist and Novus Ordo content out there that doesn't make any sense, that actually causes brain damage to people if you're not listening.
You
muted me because I mentioned Serie Picante.
Well, because he fails to give us a shout out. Like, where's our shout out, Serie Picante?
Well,
I watch your stuff too. I watch his stuff too. And I laugh. Where's our shout out?
Give us a shout out, Serie P. All right. That's all I got to say. So if you're not watching, now I don't watch Serie P every day. Okay. And now his stuff is golden every day. I don't have time. I don't have time for it. And I don't know which lay people actually have time every day for it. But I do appreciate the work that he does. And he does it with humor and with sock puppets. Yes, he does. And Master Bowser.
What's funny is that you call it work. But anyway.
It's not work for him.
I get such a kick out of him. He's been very respectful to me. I appreciate him too. So there you go.
Yeah. So I just had to give the guy his laurels. He's an unsung hero of the traditional movement.
Wouldn't it be something if his channel just takes right off and beats the dad with a webcam?
Oh, that'd be fantastic. I mean, it is. He does this every day. I mean, he's as faithful with making content as the dad with the webcam. So, and I think he's funnier. I laugh more at his stuff, about it than, and he went to Steubenville in Ohio. He's just like one of us. He was in the Novus Ordo, and he actually studied Sacrosanctum Concilium, the first document of the Second Vatican Council in the Church's liturgy. Wow. And he studied liturgy as a professional in the Novus Ordo. So if anybody can dismantle the Sacrosanctum Concilium and Vatican II documents in the Church's liturgy, it's him.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's not like he's so he studied with Scott Hahn, and he studied with all the big names in Steubenville in Ohio. And also Eric Drzewski went to Steubenville in Ohio too. That was
okay, guys.
The 20K webcam. Yeah.
We've been on over an hour. If the laity here, the 98 people watching, the nearly 100 people watching, want us to continue, we got to start including the super chats. So Restless Heart Media is monetized. Super chats, if you want us to continue, super chats. But to be honest, I'm tired. I got 7 a.m. mass tomorrow. We'll be on next month. Restless Heart Media is monetized. You want us to keep going? You want conversation to keep going? Then show it by putting it in super chats. Regardless, this Friday on Restless Heart Media, you have Alberto and I back on for Friday Night Leisure. A reminder about Pro Stradamus Gala, prostradamus.com. To meet us all in person. To support traditional Catholicism as we continue to grow the movement. Of course, we are a movement, CF Glow, that is open and working with anybody. We do not consider ourselves the one true church. We consider ourselves one little part of it. We're here to make sure that the restoration occurs, that the kingdom of our Lord is founded on this earth, the kingdom of heaven, and we help get souls to heaven. So anyway, any last words from anybody else?
Just God bless and protect you.
God bless and keep you. All good. Blessed Mother